Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the complete 5th season of The Simpsons on DVD, which this season is overall a great collection of episodes featuring really some of the more iconic ones as a whole, particularly the 100th episode, which is Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song, which is a great episode. And we also have some of my personal favorites. Homer Goes to College, which is arguably one of the funniest episodes of the show. Bart Gets an Elephant was a great episode, likewise with Burns' Air, another really interesting Bart-themed episode. Treehouse of Horror 4 is a great one, and one of my all-time favorites is yet another murder/revenge plot from good old Sideshow Bob in the episode Cape Fear. So 22 episodes are included on this set, spread over 4 DVD discs, and the episodes air between the years 1993 through to 94. There's the side of the box set with Bart and Principal Skinner. The back, where for once I've actually retained the backing card, which is a rarity, but there's the list of the episodes there on the back, 22 of them like I mentioned before. And then the list of special features, which I still stick by my words of saying that the Simpsons sets arguably have the absolute best selection and most detailed special features on any kind of DVD sets. So of course we have audio commentaries on every episode included, deleted scenes, which is where some of my personal interests end up, likewise with things such as the multi-angle animation showcase, some illustrated commentaries, which are a neat touch. It gives you a little bit more sort of behind the scenes of the makings of the show, along with some extra original sketches as well, and some extra commercials similar to what we have had in previous seasons there too. Runtime on this season, 482 minutes in total, and is rated a 12 here in the UK for mild language, sex references, and violence. Removing the backing card reveals yet again more imagery there of the pets. There's the other spine with both Lisa there and groundskeeper Willie. And then removing the slip box, we have the big reveal of the circus-style artwork, which I believe is mimicking and depicting one of the more iconic couch gags from some of the earlier seasons, which was frequently repeated. So we have this great circus aesthetic, which is overall fantastic, featuring even some of the characters that are in this season, including Stampy the Elephant, which is a great touch. And there we go. So before we go any further with that, there's the inside of the actual box set with yet again more images of the pets. And as ever, just like with the other TV set style box sets, you can swap over the artwork for the inside. Taking a look at the inside artwork there, we have once again yet another printed note from Matt Groening. Some more artwork there of the Simpsons family, and then unfolding this reveals yet again more artwork there of the pets, and of course your 4 discs included there. So there you go, disc 1, 2, 3, and disc 4. And removing the discs reveals the artwork there beneath with the Simpsons characters bowing, and yet again, like I mentioned before, some of the more iconic characters featured on the artwork there that were included in this season, and I love how Maggie's there representing the 100th episode. So there you go, and that leads us straight into the episode guide. And here is the episode guide, which on the inside cover we have a full breakdown of all the episodes and features and which disc that they can be located on. So if you're looking for something in particular, that may be helpful to you. And then moving straight into the episodes. First up for disc 1, we have Homer's Barbershop Quartet, which is a really interesting dive into Homer's past, where the family are at a flea market and discover a record with Homer's face on it, and that leads Homer into telling a story from only a couple of years ago in the somewhat linear timeline of The Simpsons, where Homer was in fact part of a band with Principal Skinner, Apu, Chief Wiggum, and then later replacing Chief Wiggum, Barney, and they sang at Barbershop together. And this episode was overall definitely not only a heartwarming episode, but just one that really sticks in the mind, especially for that Baby on Board song that has always lived with me ever since watching this episode. So definitely one that I would recommend if you are new to The Simpsons, perhaps. Next up is Cape Fear, another Sideshow Bob episode, obviously in reference to, I would say, both the original 60s Cape Fear movie and then the 90s remake as well, to a degree there as well, where Bart once again foils one of Sideshow Bob's fiendish plots, where he sets out to kill Bart which at the beginning is sending the Simpsons family letters addressed to Bart saying that he's going to kill him. And then later, when the family do move into witness protection, which involves some of the funniest dialogue exchanges with Homer in particular, Sideshow Bob almost completes his mission and is foiled once again by Bart, and that ending with the great singing from Kelsey Grammer, who voices Sideshow Bob, is one of my favourite Simpsons moments, and definitely, again, a standout from this season. Next up is Homer Goes to College, which is genuinely one of my all-time favourite episodes of the show, and is arguably one of the funniest episodes of the series, as well written, of course, by Conan O'Brien. And this episode's portrayal of Homer is absolutely fantastic. It's really eccentric, where Homer, during a workplace evaluation, actually causes a core meltdown at the power plant. And so he's sent to college to basically do his degree in order to keep his job. And the way he treats both people on the college campus, giving us the ever-iconic amongst other things, Homer is out to cause chaos, along with obviously trying to earn his degree as well. And the characters that he ends up paired with, the three nerd characters, are some of the funniest side characters that don't really make too much of an appearance after this episode, but are included as background characters and have one or two appearances here and there at the later stages of the show. Next up we have Rosebud, guest starring the band The Ramones, and this is a really great Mr. Burns-centric episode where during a birthday celebration he is basically unable to focus and he keeps reflecting on his childhood, which seems to be very oddly similar to Citizen Kane as a kind of parody, and he is basically longing after his beloved childhood teddy called Bobo. And bizarrely, in a coincidental turn of events, the bear is actually discovered to have been frozen in ice, and the ice is then supplied to the Quickie Mart, where Bart takes it home and gives it to Maggie. And so throughout the remainder of the episode, it's Burns versus Maggie to try and see who will actually be the victor in keeping Bobo the teddy bear. So definitely an episode that is not only heartwarming to an extent with the ending as well, but it's just overall really humorous for the way the events do play out. And then, of course, the obligatory Treehouse of Horror episode, we have Treehouse of Horror 4, which has, once again, the three-act structure, the first of which is probably one of my all-time favourite Treehouse of Horror moments, where Ned Flanders is portraying the devil, where Homer out loud wishes he could sell his soul for a donut, and so that is taken quite literally, and even goes to a somewhat demonic court case. Definitely one of the more interesting Treehouse of Horror-themed moments. The next act is Bart basically trying to fight off a gremlin that's taking apart the side of the bus, and the animation throughout that sequence is some of the best stuff they have done for Treehouse of Horror, especially for the time. And the third segment is a little bit more forgettable, where it's revealed that Mr. Burns is a vampire, or basically Dracula in this rendition, and he invites the Simpsons family over to his outside resort to essentially drink their blood, as it would be. Kind of predictable. And overall, for a Treehouse of Horror episode, this is one of the best ones by far. Definitely some of the more interesting animated segments, that's for certain. And so moving on to Disc 2, we have Marge on the Lam, which brings back the character of Ruth Powers from the previous season. And that's a character that, honestly, I wish had a little bit more screen time throughout The Simpsons. This isn't her last appearance, but she doesn't really have too many more beyond this, which is a shame. But the episode is quite interesting. Homer's a little bit paranoid about Marge going on a girls' night out, as it would be. And then it's revealed that the car that she's driving with Ruth in is actually stolen. And so being chased down by the police, where conveniently Homer is actually with Chief Wiggum in their cop car, Marge goes on the run with Ruth away from the police, and this causes a whole load of chaos. The ending is actually quite heartwarming, and I really do love the B-plot, where Lionel Hutz is actually in charge of babysitting Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, which is definitely one of the more unforgettable moments of that character. Continuing Disc 2, we have Bart's Inner Child, which is a look at the individual's personality, where Homer acquires a trampoline in a very impulsive manner, which Marge obviously disagrees with. And so with that in mind, to ensure that this kind of personality trait doesn't rub off onto the children, Marge ensures that the family attends a Brad Goodman talk, which kind of sort of does the opposite of what she is anticipating, where Goodman encourages Bart and basically all the citizens of Springfield to look into their inner child and act impulsively. And obviously with this backfiring and with this in mind, Bart lives by the sort of rule of he does what he feels like, which rubs off onto the citizens of Springfield, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, does end up being quite disastrous in the long run. Next up is Boy Scouts in the Hood, where Bart and Milhouse basically go on a bender after drinking an extra sugary squishy drink, and both end up accidentally joining the Scouts, which was a humorous turn of events. The Last Temptation of Homer, definitely one of the most iconic Homer episodes, where Homer actually accidentally falls in love with a co-worker called Mindy Simmons, and the two of them clearly have feelings for one another, and it's quite an awkward episode to watch. And the way it ends is kind of sort of enigmatic, but it does hint towards the fact that Homer has decided to stick with Marge in the end rather than actually go ahead with this so-called affair that he was actually somewhat thinking of going ahead with. So a really interesting episode that tests his relationship with Marge. Next up is Springfield, spelled with a $sign for a reason, and that's because Springfield legalizes gambling, where Mr. Burns opens a casino, and this actually encourages Marge and a gambling addiction, which is definitely a interesting Marge-themed episode for certain. And then last up for Disc 2, we have Homer the Vigilante, where Homer basically takes over a neighborhood watch team originally led by Flanders, and he is hell-bent on capturing the Springfield cat burglar out of revenge, since the cat burglar actually takes Lisa's saxophone, driving Homer to actually catch this individual. Moving on to Disc 3, we have yet another Bart episode, Bart Gets Famous, where Bart escapes from a boring trip to the box factory with the school and ends up running across the parking lot to join the Krusty the Clown show. And so he's hired as an assistant, but he accidentally walks in on a sketch and destroys the set, only to then say, "I didn't do it," which becomes a notable catchphrase for Bart, which slowly becomes increasingly more unpopular, and to a point where Bart literally despises his newfound fame, which I thought to be a really creative episode focusing on Bart.
Say the line, Bart! I didn't do it. Yeah!
Next up is Homer and Apu, which is definitely one of my all-time favourite Apu-themed episodes, where Homer consumes some tainted meat from the Quickie Mart and seeks justice, only to unintentionally get Apu fired from his job. And so with that guilt in mind, Homer attempts to try and get the Quickie Mart Corporation to reinstate Apu's employment. And this is a fantastic episode for both character building and as well featuring the ever-iconic Who Needs the Quickie Mart song.
Hey, he's not happy at all. He lied to us through song.
Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, which is a really great episode evoking a satirical style look at a collector's kind of market demographic in general. And this is basically through the character of Mr. Smithers in particular, which really made me laugh.
She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid cheap hat!
But she's got a new hat.
But of course the primary focus is on Lisa, who learns the harsh truth that the sexism displayed with the doll of Malibu Stacy is something that can't really be changed, and the doll that she creates to try and improve this outlook sadly becomes increasingly more unpopular compared to the original. Next up we have a couple of Homer-themed episodes. We have Deep Space Homer, which is pretty self-explanatory. Homer actually ends up going into orbit, and the mission does actually go wrong, where Homer does in fact save the day, only for the credit to be given to the object that he uses to save the day rather than his actions being rewarded. And we also have Homer Loves Flanders, which overall was an okay episode. It's not really one of the standout ones. It's basically Homer having a falsified friendship with Flanders just because he has a good time at a football game with him. And so he tries to be a little bit more kind to Flanders, which slowly over time becomes increasingly over-exaggerated, and it's to a point where Flanders actually finds Homer to be really annoying. So there's a bit of role reversal there, which I thought was a neat touch, and definitely some great character building for Flanders in particular. And then wrapping up Disc 3, we have Bart Gets an Elephant, another fairly self-explanatory episode. Bart ends up winning an elephant for a radio giveaway, and the elephant is just too much to handle. And so in order to give Stampy the elephant a good life, the family agrees to let him go to an animal refuge. Moving on to disc 4, we have yet another Bart episode. This is Burns' Heir, where Mr. Burns becomes overly concerned that he doesn't have someone to pass on his legacy to, and so to try and find a new protege, he tries to find someone that is worthy of his legacy through the children of Springfield. And having found no one, and with Bart taking this kind of rejection quite brutally, he smashes up all of Mr. Burns' mansion windows, only for Burns to actually find this of interest in Bart, and so he actually tries to tutor Bart in his sort of maniacal ways, only for Bart to then be torn between choosing between Mr. Burns and living the comfortable handed-to life, or returning back to his loving family. And there's some really hilarious Mole Man moments throughout this episode, where Mole Man is almost indoctrinated into thinking that he is Bart Simpson.
Cowabunga, dude.
Next up is Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song, the 100th episode of the series, where Bart brings Santa's little helper into the school, who actually gets loose in the school, and because of this incident, Principal Skinner actually loses his job, and the guilt that Bart feels really does plague him throughout the remainder of the episode. And so, with Flanders taking over as the new school principal, Bart tries to find a way to get Flanders fired and get Skinner his job back, which was overall quite scandalous and definitely one of the best episodes on this season. And for the last few episodes, we have yet another Bart-themed episode, The Boy Who Knew Too Much, where Bart skips school and crashes a gathering hosted by Mayor Quimby, and Quimby's nephew, Freddy, is actually accused of a crime that he did not commit. But if Bart testifies having witnessed this crime, he's edged with a double-ended sword, where he'll either get in trouble by Skinner for skipping school, or he'll obviously have to live with the guilt knowing that Freddy will be going down for a crime that he did not commit. So overall, quite an interesting sort of character-building episode for Bart in particular. Next up is Lady Bouvier's Lover, which is not one of my favourite episodes. It's okay, where Grandpa Simpson and Mr. Burns end up lusting after Marge's mother. And the only thing I really appreciate about this episode are the references to the movie The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, but other than that, it's not one of my favourites and not really one that I rewatch too often, if at all. And the season finale for this season, we have Secrets of a Successful Marriage, where Homer actually takes it upon himself to teach an adult education class, as it's worded, and he instead ends up spilling intimate secrets about his marriage with Marge. And when Marge comes to realize this, she's absolutely furious and finds it incredibly difficult to forgive Homer for betraying her trust. And it's a very interesting episode delving into their marriage dynamic and the kind of things that Marge really is willing to forgive. And it does thankfully end on a high note, as it would be. And so that's going to do it for my review of The Simpsons Season 5 on DVD. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments what was your favourite episode from this season in particular. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the episodes included with this set. And for more videos, you can subscribe down below to stay up to date with my channel, and there will be plenty more Simpsons related videos coming up in the not too distant future. Thanks for watching.
Are you threatening me?